My name is Bruce Raleigh. I am 73 years of age. Today's date is June 25th, 2016, in Lewis, New York. And my relationship to my partner is she's my wife.
I'm Edie Raleigh, and I'm 69 years old. And this is June 25th, 2016. And we are here in Lewis, New York, and I'm sitting with my sweetheart and husband, Bruce. Okay. So, Bruce, why don't you tell us a little bit about your growing up? What was your childhood like? Who were your parents?
Well, I would consider my childhood normal as can be. I was in the family of four. I had an older brother who was 3 years older than myself, and basically got along together as a family. We were your all-American family back then, I guess. Should be now. My father worked. My mother was a stay-at-home mother, and we went to church on Sundays and celebrated birthdays and just had good times doing what we could afford. We weren't very affluent family, but we did have money to do the things that we wanted to do.
Okay. And how was it that you, in growing up, how was it that you related to others? How would others remember you? Let's put it that way.
Oh, I think they would probably remember me as I was mostly a shy child. I was kind of a mama's boy, I think, for a while, they tell me, or as I remember. But that would be the main thing. I was kind of shy and not that really outgoing as a young lad.
Do you have any favorite stories from your childhood?
It depends on what you call a childhood. I don't have many memories of my very young years. I just, in my teens, I enjoyed when I but I tried out for the summer baseball teams, the 13 and 14-year-olds, and I made that, and that was probably one of the highlights of my growing up years. But prior to that, I can't remember anything significant.
How long did you play baseball then?
Well, I just was on the team for 2 years at that time.
What did you like about it?
Well, it gave you a feeling of accomplishment. It gave you a feeling of membership to the group, to the team, and working together and doing your best to win the games.
Was there a particular game that you remember?
Not really any particular game. I did not have a very good batting average. One game I remember, I was playing catcher at the time, and I was behind the plate, and I forget, but anyway, there was a man on third base, and the ball was hit. He came flying home, and he was a pretty hefty guy, and I was trying to block the plate and catch the ball, and it hit me across my thighs, and that really hurt for a while. But I got him out, so that's what counted.
In high school, what types of things did you do that, where were your friends? You were in band, so who were your friends?
I had friends in different areas, a lot from the grade school, the elementary school that I grew up with. The first few years we kind of hung around together since we knew each other from growing up all those years. And then being in the band, I had members in the band who became my friends. And while I was in the band, I played trumpet in the junior varsity band. And the director wanted to know if anybody wanted to play the sousaphone in the marching band because they only had one sousaphone player. And so in order to make the marching band, I stuck in my hand and said, sure, I'll play in the band and the tuba. And so I played in the marching band for the last 2 years in high school, which was kind of an accomplishment. It was one of those tubas where you don't hold it in your lap, but you crawl into it on a stand and carry it around with you. But it was a lot of fun. And
Was it heavy?
yes, it was, but it wasn't too heavy. It just felt heavy. And, you know, a high school student could carry it around. It wasn't that heavy.
Did you ever have to do anything fancy with it like they do in the football shows now? They bend over with them and bow with them. Did you ever do anything like that?
No, I think if I would have tried that, I would have fallen over on my face. It was that heavy enough to do that, rather than just show off. Yeah.
So after you graduated from high school, what did you do?
Well, I actually did nothing for a month or two, and then trying to find out what to do, and it was kind of a downturn in the economy, so I decided I would fulfill my military obligation since I had the draft back then. And so I went down and recruiter. My big brother was in the Air Force, so I figured I'll join the Air Force too. He's getting training in electronics. So I thought I would do the same. So I did that. I went down and took the Air Force qualification test. And it tested, I believe, 5 separate areas, but one of them was electronics, and I also did well in electronics, and ended up going to the electronics course in Shepherd Air Force Base.
So did you choose the Air Force just because your brother was in it mainly?
I think at that point, yes. I knew I didn't want to be a gun toter like the Marines or the Army Infantry, and I knew that they were known for their education programs and technical jobs. So that would be a better fit, you know, for once I got out of the Air Force. So I figured I would do that and then take up whatever followed after my military obligation.
Mm-hmm. And was the Vietnam War? How big was that at that time when you went in? What year did you go in?
1961, and Vietnam was, never heard of it at that point. So when I went in, it was strictly pre-Vietnam, since I went in 1961, and Vietnam did not get involved much until 1966, the start of the increase of troops over there and the increase in action in Vietnam.
So how did you get into the missiles?
Well, like I say, I took the Air Force qualification test and did well on the scores. And after I got out of basic training, or actually during basic training.
Where'd you do basic training?
Where?
Where?
I was at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And I was there for 5 weeks. And then after 5 weeks, if you're going to a tech school, you left for your tech school and finished up some academics of basic training at the tech school.
Do you want to talk about your experience in basic training?
No, it wasn't really what you would think of basic training for a military outfit. We didn't do a lot of, what would you call it, physical stuff. It was mostly information about the Air Force and the study of the Air Force background, and some marching and traditions, saluting, and military wearing and things like that. We didn't. We fired the rifles twice, I think, once to practice and once to qualify. And then, like I say, if you went to tech school after that, you went to tech school after only 5 weeks.
Okay, so then you left tech school, and then what did you do?
Well, you ask about the missiles. I think I got assigned to the missiles because of my tech scores, and went to Shepherd. And at Shepherd, I actually spent almost a year at tech school, learning about the different missile systems. I started us out learning about the flight control system. And I don't remember where, but along the line, we switched over to the automatic checkout program that they use on the missiles. So I really didn't work on the missile, but I worked on the test equipment for the missile. And took about that was about a 4 or 5 month program just to learn that.
Okay, so then when you finished that, what did you do?
After I finished that, I got my assignment, and my assignment was to Plattsburgh Air Force Base in New York. And like I say, we finished up and came to Plattsburgh and started my career on the Atlas missile at that point.
Mm-hmm. Had you ever heard of Plattsburgh before you came here?
I had no idea where Plattsburgh Air Force Base was, and then I found out some of the guys in the class were from there, and they used to talk about how cold it got or was going to get in the winters and how severe they were, and didn't know what to expect. And I came here in April, so I at least had the summer in front of me to enjoy it before we had some of those below zero winters for months at a time.
So what was it like when it was that cold and you had to come out and work on the missiles at the missile site?
It was very cold. We had a couple a detector on the outside of the silo area that we had to go outside and work on, and we would have to go up there and make adjustments to the light detector. And I remember one time I had to go up and do the flashing, and I went back in, and not too long after that, I don't know if it was still out there or a little bit later, but I felt my ear, and it felt hard, and I thought, oh, I bet I got this thing frostbitten when I went out to the site that time, and it was outside, and it was that cold. It didn't take very long to do that. I was only out for less than a half hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I must have had my hood off my ears trying to work on it because it interfered with my working. And that's probably when it happened. But it didn't do any damage, just at the tips on the ear.
Mm-hmm.
How did you like working on this missile site? What was that like for you as a 19-year-old?
It was fun. It was different because we didn't really work on the missile or any of the missile components. We worked on what they call the blast detection system, which was in the Launch Control Center.
What does that mean?
It means it would detect if we perchance were attacked through the air by an enemy, it would set off an explosion which would cause light and vibration to the ground. And this system, when it detected that, would seal off the silo, the missile silo, and everything in it. It would close all the different areas where it was exposed to the ground. And at first, the system gave us a lot of trouble because it would give false closings of those things, and it really ticked off the launch crew commander because we had to come out and they had to disable it before we got out to fix it. And that would mean they wouldn't be able to close things off if something did happen. But it was a lot of fun going out and doing work at the missile site. The only problem was, as a friend and I were discussing, was we have a big piece of equipment. It was about 3 feet long and about at least a foot on all four sides around it. And we had to carry that from ground level all the way down to the control center to work on our equipment. It was heavy. And that was a big pain in the rear, but we got the job done. And it was really an enjoyable assignment.
Mm-hmm. Actually. Tell about the time when you drove out and left your lights on.
Ooh, yeah, it was one of those cold nights, and I went out early in the evening in the winter when it got dark early, so I had my lights on, and pulled up to the site and parked the van, and it was still light enough. I must have forgotten I left my lights on. Went down in the silo, or the launch control center. I fixed the repair and came back out and got in the van. I had the van at the time and turned on the key and nothing happened. I said, uh-oh. And I looked down and it was because I had already realized that the key had been on all the time I was down there.
The lights were down.
And I had the lights on, yes. Yeah. And so I had to go back in the silo, call the base, and they had to send somebody out to to pick me up, and I think they came out and got the van the next day because it was about the middle of the night at that time. But
were there any repercussions for that?
not that I recall, no. They didn't say anything except, boy, what a dummy, goes out and leaves his lights on, in the middle of the night, freezing.
So, 62 was an important year. Why don't you tell us about your experiences related to the Cuban Missile Crisis? October 62, I believe, right?
Yes, that was a very intense time. I was just out of tech school, and they were just finishing most of the silos. They weren't even ready yet, and they went on alert because of the negotiations between, once the U.S. discovered they were bringing missiles to Cuba, President Kennedy did a, what do you call it, when they embargo, not an embargo, but they kept the ships from getting into Cuba.
Blockade,
yeah. And when they did that, the air base went on a 24-hour alert, which meant we could not leave the base. At first, could not leave the base, period. And a few days after that, they said we could leave if we left the phone number and we were within a half hour of the base, then we could leave the base. And I just remember one place called the Roman Gardens. On Wednesday, it was all you could eat spaghetti for $1. So us GIs would go over there and get spaghetti a lot of times on Wednesdays. And that's what we did that one Wednesday during those 2 weeks when the blockade was going on with Russia. And at that time, we were also working 12 hours on and 12 hours off. So we had to go into the shop on the flight line each day for 12 hours. Then we'd come back. Of course, we'd slept most of the time when we weren't working during that period. So it was pretty hectic. And at the time, little naive me, I just didn't realize how scary it was, because we could have gone to nuclear war at the time. But I just lived happy-go-lucky, and years later I finally realized how close we were to the pushing the button.
Did any other guys comment on that, or were you all pretty just doing your job?
Yeah, we mostly just did our job because we were either working or back at the barracks resting and sleeping and listening to the news, especially later on in the couple of weeks.
Sorry, what did you think about at the time in terms of your work? Was it just a job, or did you and your colleagues talk about the work?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about it much in at least my area, because we were the maintenance people. We would not be affected if something did happen. The missile crews, the launch crews, would be doing the actual retaliation. So we just went and just did our job. If they needed us to do something, we would do something. And another thing I remember, we had to have a guard posted at the entrance to the building that our offices and work areas were in, to make sure everybody that entered there had a badge and were authorized to be in the building. Even though you had to have it to get on the flight line, you again had to show it when you went into our building, our missile building.
Was that only during the crisis?
Only during the crisis to get into the building. When the crisis wasn't going on, in order to get on the flight line, you had to have the badge that got you onto it, let you know you're authorized to be out there.
Were there any hazards or pressures that bothered you while you were in the military, in the Air Force?
Not that I recall. I was kind of a easy-go-lucky guy. Because I didn't plan on staying in the Air Force, I didn't have any pressure to get promoted or get, suck up to the boss, if you want to put it like that, and get a good report. So I just kind of was putting in my time and planning on getting out anyway. So I didn't have any that type of pressure.
Mm-hmm. So what lessons did you learn from this time in the military?
Oh, I learned what it was like to have a job where you were rated and to make sure you did your job, and because that was my first full-time job, and all that experience paid off later in life, I think. And you didn't goof off with the military. You either did your job or you're in a big trouble. So it taught me discipline, self-discipline, and I guess that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Are you happy to have been a part of the military?
Oh yes, like I say, it really paid off and teaches you discipline like that, and how to take orders and responsibility, and to make sure you do your job. So it really paid off in that respect.
Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of other questions I'd like to ask, but I want you to spend some time explaining what you did when you went through, decided that you wanted to start the 556 reunion group. Why don't you talk about how you did that? How I know it took hours and hours of work, and I think that should be documented.
Well, after I got out of the military, several years later, I began working for the Army at out in Warren, Michigan, at the Arsenal, and I would sit in the director's office, and I saw the papers, and they would have a section on military reunions. So I said, military reunions, I wonder if my outfit's in here. So I would look at it, and of course it wasn't, and I said, man, I wonder if everybody ever had a reunion for my group, and I didn't know about it. And of course, no way of knowing that. So I wonder if I could get in contact with my old test equipment shop friends. And so I put an ad in the USA Today, believe it or not.
When was this?
This would be about 1986. And I told them I'd be interested in having a reunion, and I think I remember it cost me $60 or something, which wasn't cheap at that time. So I went out and put the ad in there, and of course I got no responses. And so I said, well, maybe a military magazine, because that might be more they would read. And I put it in there, and lo and behold, I got a response or two or three. And they knew some people, so I said, tell their friends, ask them if they'd be interested, and gradually it snowballed until finally we had, 50, 60 members contacted in late 87, middle of 87, and I'm not sure what the number was, but I said, I've been doing this for a couple of years. We probably should have a reunion. And I put the word out and came back. Most of them were interested in saying, yeah, maybe we should. And one guy said, no, it's too early. We don't have enough people, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, if we don't do now, when are we going to do it? When are we going to have enough people? So I went ahead and did it. And in 1988, we had our first reunion back at Plattsburgh Air Force Base, or at Plattsburgh when the Air Force Base was still here. And we had about 40 people show up with their spouses and families, and we had a good old time. And I asked them if they wanted to carry it on, and they did. And we're still an organization.
Mm-hmm.
What did it mean to you to bring all those people together?
Well, the ego builder, I guess. It made me feel good, and that everybody wanted to keep going, and they wanted to make me president for another year, and I said, well, no, I'll help the next guys out, but I don't want to be president. I said I would be the secretary and keep notes and things. And so they agreed to that, and we had our next one in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. And there we started electing a new president after every reunion. And I continued to be the secretary-treasurer.
And you still are.
I still am, and when our treasurer passed away, I took over his job too, so I'm the secretary-treasurer for life.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like to be back together?
Oh, it was just amazing to see people, hear what they were doing, what they had done since they were in the military, or in our Air Force or missile squadron. I'll get that right one of these days. And to find out what they had done and how their lives had been and how they changed and if they had stayed in, if they got out like I did. And it was just fun. Every so often we still contact new members. And so I think at our largest one we might have had close to 100 members, something like that, at our largest reunion.
And to clarify, 556 was the name of your squad?
That's the squadron number, Strategic Missile Squadron number. It's 556 SMS, they called it.
And how long did it exist?
What's that?
The squadron.
The squadron, I'm not sure when it was officially designated. I think it was probably 59, 58 when it was up at a place in Maine. It was called the 556. They reactivated the number. It was actually a World War II bomb squadron. And they deactivated the number, and when we came along, for some reason they chose their number to reactivate, and that became our number, and the squadron became fully activated in 1962.
And
with that number.
How long did it last?
We were deactivated in 1965.
Why did they do that?
Because of the newer missiles that came aboard, the Titan II, or Titan I, Titan II with the Minuteman. And there may have been another one along the way, but they were safer missile. They were solid fuel, where ours was a liquid fuel. And they didn't require as much manpower. They could be operated remotely, especially the Minuteman. So they really didn't need the Atlas missile anymore. It was dangerous. And so they phased it out in 65.
So squadron number was designated specifically for a type of missile. It wasn't something that they would just start a new missile and keep the same number. Is that how they did that?
I'm not sure. I think it was just a set of numbers that for some reason was assigned to the missile squadrons. I noticed most of the numbers begin with a 5, especially since I've seen, even there today, they'll have hats on that begin with 5.
From other squadrons?
From other missile squadrons, yes.
Okay. Anything else you want to tell about your time in the military?
Well, it was a lot of fun, actually, as I look back on it. Maybe not at the time, but it was a lot of fun. It was a real learning experience to be in that situation where it's not one where you could say, I quit, I'm going home. You were in there until you served your enlistment, or heaven forbid they threw you out, which some people were thrown out, but it was a real growing up period, as I said, and it's one I wouldn't change for anything.
Mm-hmm. So when you got out in 1965?
Six.
You were in how long?
4 years and 9 months. I extended my enlistment for 9 months.
So you got out, and then you decided to go to work?
That's right. My family decided I should go to work too. So.
And what did you do first?
First, my dad got me into the job at Ford Motor Company, and working in the duplicating room, they called it, making copies of blueprints for automobiles and parts and things like that. And we would run them on big machines. They would run up several copies at a time on paper, and the engineers would make changes, and they'd bring them back and make copies of their changes. And while I was doing that, I went to school in the evening. And I don't know why I'm getting teared up.
I don't know, because it's good memories. was a time that you were making big decisions in your life.
And I found out if I could study, I could get good grades, and I started getting good grades at the community college, and
because in high school you never studied and you just made it through.
Yeah.
So this was a new experience for you.
And then I met my wife, and she encouraged me to continue. And
you met me.
Yeah. And I got good grades at the community college level and transferred to Michigan State University and graduated with honor from there. And I applied to law school, and lo and behold, I got accepted at law school. And I graduated from law school and passed the bar. And I went out and practiced law for a while after that, and I felt good about that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What about that was rewarding?
Well, just the accomplishment from my background. My parents didn't even graduate from high school.
They didn't even go to high school.
They didn't even go to high school.
Your brother didn't go to college.
My brother didn't go to college. He didn't graduate from high school, so I was the first one in my family to graduate even from college, let alone law school. And that's kind of makes you feel good.
Yeah, major accomplishment. There wasn't the ethos of education in your family, and yet you were able to accomplish that. Mm-hmm. So I'm very proud of you for doing that. So, tell me about tell me about your faith.
My faith. I was raised in Baptist church there in Lincoln Park, and I accepted Christ at age 13, and He's been a part of my life ever since. More now than then. I've gone through periods where He's been less a part, but He's a part of my life, and my Christian faith is very strong. We have a daughter who's in Christian work. She was the Campus Crusade for Christ, now called Crew. So she's involved in it, and my whole family are strong Christians. So it's a basic part of my life.
What was the most profound religious moment, spiritual moment of your life?
Probably when my daughter was born. It seems that, I don't know if you call it spiritual or not, but it just was so amazing to see her born.
Thankful.
Rebecca Ann
Raleigh Duffield.
She is married now.
Yeah. She was. We didn't think we were going to have her. She was a surprise gift from the Lord.
We tried for a while and nothing, and then we decided we might as well give up and started adoption proceedings, and shortly thereafter, my wife was pregnant.
9 months later, Rebecca was born. Yeah, that was a great moment. We were overwhelmed. We thought we were having a boy, huh?
Yeah, that's true. We had a boy's name all picked out.
Ended up being a girl. So, you've had some major illness issues in your life, and why don't you briefly, if you can, tell us about, you walk with a cane now, and you've gone through some difficult times with that. You were a runner. Tell us about that.
Well, I've been exercising most of my adult life, and I used to do a lot of walking. When I was at work, I'd walk around the perimeter, and I decided maybe I should try running. I've been doing this for 10, 15 years, so I took up running and finally got to where I could run quite a distance. And one summer I ran 2 8K races and 5 3K races and did pretty well. But at the end of the season, my legs started stiffening up at the end of the races, and I didn't know what was going on. I just thought it was arthritis or something at my age. And the next spring, I was away at a class for my work, and my legs really stiffened up, and I fell over. But I got up and made it through the week, and I came back and saw the doctor. And first, I thought it was my knees, and saw a sports doctor, and he had me do some therapy. I think he did an MRI on my knees and did some therapy, and nothing helped. So my family doctor finally said, it looks like it's something neurological, so I should go to the doctors at University of Michigan, check myself in the emergency room, and they would take care of it before they would let me go. And I did that, and the result was I had a spot in my back that had an AV fistula, I guess you could call it, and they fixed that up, and it leveled off for several years, and the symptoms started happening again a couple of years ago, and my legs are stiff, and they've tried 2 more laminectomies at different parts on my spine, and neither of them have seemed to work. So I'm getting a little worse all the time, it seems.
So that's been a real struggle. How do you feel about what you've been going through with that?
I just don't know what to think. I would think, I usually blame the doctors, kind of in a way, for not being able to find out exactly what's wrong, but I don't know. There's nothing to tell them what's wrong. So I don't know what exactly I think about it, except that's the way the Lord wants it. But I don't like it.
Yeah. So how are you getting through it?
I just day by day, I just pray about it when I think about it and do what I have to do. Make it through.
Anything else?
No.
What do you hope for your futures?
Oh, to spend a lot of time with the grandkids.
Serve the Lord.
Serve the Lord, and
Yeah, we have 2 grandkids. Sire, who was a miracle adoption. Our daughter had trouble too, and then we had a little miracle biological granddaughter, Millie. So we have Sawyer Joseph and Millie Grace. They'll be 6 and 3 in July. So we have 2 miracles there from the Lord. So we've been blessed. We like to spend as much time as we can with them. They live in Kentucky, as they're serving there in their ministry. We live in Michigan. So we hope to travel a little more. We traveled here. So, but we travel down to Kentucky a lot.
yeah,
Every month. We get down there every month. They live in a beautiful area in the Daniel Boone National Forest. So we're blessed.
Thank you for spending this time.
You're welcome.